Oh, yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Hello, hello. Gather around. I've got my warm coffee. Feel like curling up with a good book? No, not a good book, because we're about to get schooled by some marketing knowledge here by an expert. I can't wait to introduce my guest today. He's an absolute badass. Why? Why is he that, Casey? Well, he is a marketing leader, which you can expect from this podcast, but he's also a mentor to other marketing leaders. So this is the Jedi that teaches the Jedis, the Yoda's Yoda, if you will. He's seasoned. He's had experience doubling revenue, scaling operations, steering businesses into growth and profitability on global scales. Mentor to CMOs at cmomentor.com, CMO at Billtrust. Grant Johnson, welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, Casey, it's great to be here, and that's a fabulous intro. We'll see if I can live up to it to the next several minutes when we have a nice conversation.
Heck yeah, man. I'm excited to have you here. I mean, it's one thing to have a CMO here, but have the CMO here. Let's go. So I'm going to grab this thing. It's heavy, but you told me you work out every single day. So I bet you got this. So 1 second. Here it is. Okay, here we go. Take Thor's hammer, smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus question, bogus strategy. Set the record straight once and for all.
Well, we'll start with one of my favorites, and that's attribution. And I just want to throw that one into the river with a fast tide. It can just like sail out into the ocean and disappear. I believe that as a CMO, should also be Chief Pipeline Officer. The CRO, or CSO, as often called in different companies, owns the bookings. Boy, that's a lot of pressure to deliver the number every quarter. And so I've been asked to, and in recent cases, volunteered to say, look, I'm the chief marketing officer, but I'll take primary responsibility for all pipeline. And one of the reasons to do that is to get out of this battle over how do you have the right attribution? Because the more important question is, are you going to make the number? Are you going to hit the bookings target? Do you have adequate coverage, whatever your multiple is, based on the progression, conversion, close rate of the waterfall of your pipeline from top of the funnel to close one business, right? And while I don't create all the pipeline in any company that I've been at, there are other contributors. They could be the BDR organization,
Sure.
could be channel partners, could be sales. And of course, there's pipeline for existing customers, which is generally a little easier to create. Pipeline for net new logos, which is generally harder to create. But
Mhm.
ultimately, I like to call it everybody's pipeline, and I ultimately own it. And therefore, I don't get into these heated battles anymore like, well, your attribution's only at 67%, was supposed to be 7. Well, pipeline's at 110. That's the best number to worry about. Or if I'm exceeding my target, my attribution's at 70% and the overall company's at 90, I have nothing to celebrate.
Right. Right. And that starts that disconnect right away with sales where we're measuring and, to your point, celebrating something that doesn't really tie into what our teammates are trying to accomplish.
Yeah. And then there's the other thing I think is really important because I've worked on this with my team. I've been at Billtrust celebrating my 1 year anniversary yesterday. It flew by. So 1 year, I've been a CMO 3 times more than 3 years. That's partly why I mentor other CMOs. How do you survive and thrive, right? You got to survive first,
Yeah.
then you can thrive. So, but here's the interesting thing is we start looking at ROI, uh, return on marketing invested, ROMI, or MROI, marketing return on investment, whatever acronym you want to use. And as long as you have a positive ROI in the total cost of marketing, and I can't tell you what ours is, but it's more than 3 or 4 to 1. As long as you have that, that's the more important discussion because then you can go to the board and say, look, how much faster do we want to grow? how much more bookings do we want to attain? And instead of saying, well, why aren't you at 70%? You're only at 67% contribution to pipeline. So, okay, well, that's not the most important question. The more important question is, how can we raise the bar for the entire company? How can we grow pipeline? And so that's why you shift the conversation. I have to share one anecdote where I made my mind up.
Yeah.
I would never go down that rat hole. And I had a seven-figure deal that through funnel analysis, it was clear that it was marketing attributed. And the CEO and founder said to me, well, Grant, I met this person 3 years ago at a trade show, so it's not really marketing. So yeah, I suppose if he had a more than a 3-year sales cycle, I said, but I don't want to get into that argument. He's the founder and CEO,
Yeah.
right?
Isn't a trade show marketing anyways?
Yeah, and I like to call trade shows, you're not always gonna get the best investment. Obviously, a customer event is if you have your annual user conference, whatever they might be called, the X World, XYZ World, right? But, trade shows, you can often get what I call intercept marketing. Like, they may not know you're in their solution set, but they're at the show anyway, so put on a good event, have a, compelling, booth presence and all the rest of the pre, during, and post-show marketing you do, and you might intercept a process. Oh my God, you're a better solution than the one that I thought was the best solution. Now, that's not something you want to count on, but it can happen at a trade show.
Yeah. Hey, but to your point, I mean, I kind of sidetracked you a little bit, but to your point, don't even get in those kind of conversations. It's not about needling over stupid percentages of how much I contributed based on some subjective or maybe tracked thing. Like, don't even get into that contest.
Well, and then you can also progress the conversations. What are we doing to help? You know, some people said the MQL is dead. I don't know. You've got to start somewhere, right? I'm not necessarily of that philosophy. But then we start getting to, well, what's our conversion rate at each key stage, and how can marketing help us go from an unqualified lead to a qualified lead, from a stage one to a stage two, right? And or can we help with velocity because we've got an intent platform that shows us, hey, of these 25 target accounts, these 10 are really surging. They're really active. I mean, all my peers are using some sort of, I won't name who we're using, but because they're all good, you just have to make them work for you. They're all using some
Right.
sort of ABM intent platform and other types of, signals on their website and, through their digital presence. And that's when you just have a more meaningful conversation. Like, let us help you make the number versus like, did we get enough leads? Right. Because ultimately, you're going to have to progress enough to close, whether you need a 3X multiple or a 4X or whatever it might be, depends on the nature of your business and the maturity of your operations. But that's another reason just to get away from that earlier stage, this, controversy and move it into, hey, we're trying to both close business, right?
You come into an organization and the sales leader is not jiving with you. You're not clicking, and they are not on board with you taking ownership of pipe, and they don't want to collaborate. They're old school sales. What do you do in that situation? Or if it's not you, if you're advising someone, what do you advise that CMO to do in that situation?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm actually advising someone right now where I sort of describe there's two types of sales leaders. One that's we're in it together, that one is that I'm going to succeed no matter what, and then if that means that you will fall short. And so one of the things where at the beginning of the planning year, I've suggested one of the early career CMOs that I'm mentoring, which is taken to heart, said, look, let's sit down and let's establish mutual goals. Like, what are the goals that we both want to sign up for, even if we have contributing uh, unequal contribution to those goals. So we need a certain amount of pipeline or a number of units if you're selling a product. In order to get that, we're going to have to do X, Y, and Z activities. I'm going to take ownership for these. You'll take ownership for those. Our teams will work together. And if you can't get the CRO to agree to mutual shared goals and outcomes, it's going to be an ongoing battle. And that's just sort of a personality conflict you may have to go to the CEO to resolve because some of the best partnerships I've seen, in fact, I probably know 100 CMOs, and one was telling me where when they present to the board, they do every other slide. It's a joint sales and marketing. I mean, that's about how good it could get. I don't know you have to actually orchestrate it to where, you know, you finish each other's sentences and you go every other slide,
Yeah.
but you should both know the numbers equally well and be in it together. And that's what I think you need to do. But you really bring up one of the fundamental issues that a lot of CMOs face, early stage CMOs, or say you're new to the company and somebody's been there and has, made 8 straight quarters. And what are you going to do for me, a marketer? Like, it's been raining leads and like you just showed up and the economy slowed down. So what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to close this gap? And one of the things that does help, and again, this is what there's tons of these philosophical arguments that occur, especially in my space of B2B, I'm sure in B2C as well, where it's who owns the SDRs, the BDRs, ADRs, whatever you want to call the business developments.
Yeah.
And I argue that if you can't own them, you should own them in marketing because that's really going to help you get speed to lead. Like you've got, on your website, you got some sort of chat tool and you're the first to respond. That's going to help you if you've got a process that not let, any customer go untouched or prospect for whatever that SLA is. And then, fresh is best and you get those leads. Now, if, the SDRs are out doing other things for the sales organizations, they're not giving you feedback on, what messages, what offers, what products, what segments, what themes are resonating. You're not getting the same value. So if you don't have that report to you, then you definitely need to have alignment and ongoing, dialogue. I think, again, it's a connected go-to-market motion where sales, marketing, SDRs, and channels, if that's part of your ecosystem, are all sharing information in sync to move the ball forward. So I think that's another where you can kind of get out of sync if you don't have the SDRs and you're not having a collaborative relationship where you're getting ongoing feedback loops because you can throw anything over the wall. And unfortunately, just like throwing darts with your eyes closed, you're going to miss half the time.
Yeah. And that makes some holes in the wall too, which
Yeah, I would miss half the time. Maybe you'd make it half the time. I don't know,
yeah.
or more.
I'm not some bar darts ringer and just waiting to bet somebody. Yeah, well, you're
Yeah.
missing if you're closing your eyes. You know, a lot of times, people like to compare starting moves in chess. Do you see some core starting moves for taking on a new position as the marketing leader, as the CMO of an organization? Are there some key moves you're gonna need to make?
That's a great question, and, like you might imagine, as a 5-time CMO, I've made plenty of mistakes, and I try to avoid making the same mistake twice, right? That's really a key learning, opportunity, and, I do a 100-day game plan, and, part of that is informed by the dance or the dialogue that you have in trying to decide, "Hey, do I wanna work with these folks? This is the kind of opportunity for me. Will I have fun? Will I be challenged? Will I be rewarded? What's my team like?" And so you have that plan, but in that is, like you say, it's, I don't know if there's one thing, like low hanging fruit is the term that's often used or quick wins. And so I sort of identify what are those things that I can get points on the board in the first 90 days, the next 90 days, the first 6 months, the next 6 months. And what resources do I have, human and financial? What support do I have, or will I need to get on board to make this happen? And I reflect on, it's just a good timing that I'm talking with you today, Casey, because as I look at the year, we did a little video. Marketing does that among other things, and we sort of celebrated some of the
Nice.
key accomplishments for the company of the year, and a lot of those key accomplishments were part of what marketing was involved in. So we launched a new global website. We won Best SaaS Website of the Year. So we're in a category that's accounts receivable, order to cash, and financial process automation. But we won Best SaaS Website. So other SaaS companies could be in different categories. That was a pretty good achievement. It was a whole new platform. It was a whole new information architecture, easier to navigate. And of course, we track all the stats you would track on page visits, time on site, bounce rate, conversions, form fills, et cetera, et cetera. We launched a new brand purpose, moving finance forward. And that was a big win. We launched new mission, vision, values for the company. And I was one of the leaders in the executive team behind that. And so you sort of identify your best practices, what your competitors are doing. Sometimes, hey, we have a competitive disadvantage. We've got to make up that gap. We had a certain gap that I had noticed, and we just went on the offensive in content marketing. We created so much share of voice that at the end of the day, it looked like we were the leader, right?
Yeah.
So those are the types of things. Now you also have to be mindful of what your peers see as gaps. The CEO, what he see or she sees as a gap. Product team or sales team. The other areas that you have to sort of weigh what's it going to take to make up that gap, or how long is it going to take, and then you just sort of use your judgment and push forward those initiatives. I like the metric at the top 10 things, right?
Yeah.
So you could have top 3, top 5. What are the top 10 initiatives? And I try to map the initiatives, the company's strategic objectives or key outcomes that it's trying to achieve, so you can show marketing is aligned to the business, right? We've gone way past the days where marketing is a bunch of activities. Marketing is outcomes. That's where the best marketers succeed. They drive outcomes, they deliver outcomes, they're continually improving. And with, Chat GPT and generation AI, there's more tools than ever to help us do that. The hard part is, which ones do you use?
Yeah. Right. Right. And prioritizing and choosing, right? Placing your bets, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a judgment thing, right? And I learned early on. I was talking to a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company right before he was 40, and I said, like, how the heck did you get here? Because like I was early 30s, and maybe not as ambitious as he was.
Sure.
I wasn't aiming to become CEO. It's like it wasn't accidental, right? And he said, look, I would just always, every time I come into a company, I'd look at what's working, what's not working, what are some opportunities we haven't considered, and I would go attack that. I said, really? He said, yeah, I wouldn't do all the work. I would marshal the resources, and if I was wrong, I would note if the initiative wasn't panning out, I would cut losses, pivot fast, and not just keep hitting my head against the wall. And eventually, this individual's track record of progressive successes led him to that stage. So that's a really good idea. And I've always, as a lead marketer, as on my way up, it might have been different, but I've got the conferred authority to take more risk because I ultimately own the budget. So I say, look, we got to try stuff out all the time. Fail fast is got to be the mentor. We're not going to succeed, right, on everything we do. But if we succeed on something, it could be wildly successful and we can do lots more of it. But if we fail fast, it doesn't really matter because we bet 5,000 or 10,000 or something that's manageable within whatever your budget might be.
Right. Right. Okay. Um, for those listening that maybe are just not yet in that role, but they want to strive to be that senior marketer in a large organization, what are the kind of areas they should either invest their time or their learning, their skills? Where should they place their bets?
That's a great question, and it is one of those. It depends, where if you want to be a VP of marketing, or you want to be a uh, head of marketing or chief marketing officer. I would certainly build your network. Talk to people who've gotten there. I had a very intentional path. Like, okay, I got to manager, senior manager, director, senior director, VP, CMO, and that it took years. Each step took time, and I was like, this is where I'd set my sights on it. I had mentors along the way. In fact, I took over for one of my mentors at a company at one point, and which was just interesting coincidence. And talk to those folks and find out, like, how did you get to where you are? Like, I'm mentoring somebody, for example, at our company who is probably 2 steps away, from getting to a CMO, and they probably won't get to it at our company.
Mhm.
Trying to get this person to that next level, and to say, here's how you broaden your skills. So, I mean, that's one thing, is being intentional. Second thing is you've got to get 360-degree feedback. Get it from your peers, get it from people outside of marketing. I think sales tend to be brutally honest. If you can handle that, that's good. Like this piece of this program sucked, or this collateral didn't. This ROI calculator the customer laughed at.
Yeah.
It's not. It's like it's not believable. Whatever it might be. And then, but the support groups. I'm part of CMO huddles and CMO Collaborative. Those are
Mm.
two good CMO organizations. There's a dozen, I'm sure, right? That's all I have time for. But find birds of a feather, find other like organizations, individuals maybe one step ahead who are willing to give time. I love at this point in my career helping others. That's partly why I mentor, but I'll help people in a non-paid, just like, hey, somebody's looking for a recommendation on an agency or a recommendation on a PR firm. I just think you pay it forward, right? It's just like the thing you do. But yeah, if you're earlier, you have to decide where you want to go, what you're willing to do to get there. In other words, how hard do you want to work? And my last piece of advice is be a pluser. That means is do more than expected. That's how you get noticed. It's like, wow, that was here was the assignment, and you delivered X plus times two, right? And we just at our company, we have a CEO Excellence Awards. A lot of companies do this, are like 750 people, and approached a couple large, larger size for the company,
Yeah.
and we've been around 20 plus years at Billtrust. And so you don't get nominated for CEO Excellence Award by just showing up. You've got to do a lot more. And
Yeah.
so if there are those kinds of awards that you could aspire to, you talk to, why were you singled out last year? What did you do that was so special or extra effort that you put in? Or, I just say just lean in.
Yeah.
And, the only constant is change. The work will teach you. It's okay to make mistakes. Hopefully you're in a culture where that doesn't, excoriate people who fail. What can we learn from that?
Powerful. I mean, my next question really has been growing on me for a while. Who are you? Like, how do you know all these things? You touched on it a little bit with a little bit of your past, but take me back to little you days, right? What was it like growing up? Did you know you're going to be, did little Grant know he was going to be you're running marketing organizations, multi time CMO? Take me back in time. What was it like?
Look, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I was born in LA and I love movies. I like telling stories, as you might get a sense.
Sure.
And I was captivated by sight, sound, and motion. Uh, like a lot of folks, had a film class and, thought about that industry. But I got my first tech job in the early 20s, and I was very fortunate that it was rotational assignment.
Mm,
And I don't know how many companies do that. Like you're an engineer, you're a salesperson, you're in human resources or talent or whatever it might be. Um, so they started me in production. That bored me to tears. Like, and I get it. It's important. Things have to be built around the world. And then I was in administration and, policies, procedures that also, my eyes were watering up every day. I think, I needed toothpicks to keep them open. But then I hit sales and marketing. And I said, wow, this is where the action is. We've got these trade shows, we're doing advertising, we're talking to customers, I'm doing these demos. The early days of computers, I won't tell you what keystrokes I was using, what computer it was, but it was a computer at least. It wasn't an abacus. It wasn't that long ago. But, I said, this is where the action is. And so I decided, like, I'm going to go down. I started in product marketing. And, and when I was early in product marketing, to see like there's a couple fundamental areas in B2B organizations,
mm,
and product marketing is one, and demand gen or revenue marketing, it's often called today. Those are kind of the drivers. So I kind of got expertise in both those areas. And eventually somebody took a chance on me and said, look, I think you've got enough skills. Maybe you're not, a world-class, uh, uh, you know, s- m- Marcom person, right? Like
yeah.
I can edit anything, but I can't give me a blank piece of paper and have me write a 5-page white paper. That's not me. I can edit a 10-page white paper. I'm not going to just do that, right?
Right.
But that's fine. Everybody has different skill sets. Some people, I think I'm strong in branding, but I didn't come up the agency role. Some people come up the agency role. They're brilliant at branding, right? They've done these, especially CPG backgrounds. I think are great. P&G, you name it,
Yeah.
Unilever. But so I picked those two areas, and then eventually you have to surround yourself with like where you're not strong, you have people that are stronger and you can learn from them over time. Eventually, when you've done this a few times, you should have strength every area. But that's kind of sort of the path I took. And I had started in hardware. I was actually director of product marketing for Toshiba
Mhm.
notebook computers. And then I went to Semantic. And when I got to software, I said, hey, I like the fact that it's the intangible and it gives you more intellectual proving ground to convince a buyer of something that you can't see or touch. well, yeah, you touch the keyboard. You don't really touch the software, right? Unless you're coding. Um, that can change their business, right? And
Right.
I sort of feel my career. I've done cybersecurity. I've done business process automation. Now we're doing financial process automation, or otherwise known as fintech and payments and so forth. And we're providing gain. We're not avoiding pain, which is like if you're in cybersecurity, you don't want to get hacked or you get phished or anything like malware, ransomware. But I like selling gain, not avoiding pain. And so that for me, I'd gotten to software, then I picked my niche in software. Like I like helping individuals improve. That's why I coach, helping businesses improve, helping our customers improve. That's where I get satisfaction, right? So that's why I've never had that cognitive dissonance. I think the worst thing that happens, you pick a career unintentionally and you get to whatever your age is, 40, 50, I don't know, you get somewhere, oh shit, I don't really like doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And people say to me, like, well, like, where do you get your energy from? It's the best time ever to be in marketing. I was just talking to one of our board members and pretty well-known person who says, don't you feel like we're just getting started? And I do. I feel like we've learned a ton, but the future is so promising. We have to make it. We have to be responsible when it comes to Gen AI and things like that.
Yep.
But you have more tools at your disposal to make the most of what your potential is as an individual and as a business.
Yeah. Man, it's crazy to like look back and reflect that forward, you know?
Yeah, well, I'll have to tell you, back in 2002 at Frontbridge, I was spending 70,000 a month of this thing called, PPC. Like we were, I don't know when Google got rolling, but this is like 20 years ago. I was just starting. I was a VP. I'd not made CMO yet.
Sure.
It took a number of years later, but we didn't know what the hell we were doing. Like, hey, this thing, I think it's working. I mean, I think it's delivering
Yeah.
leads. Now the thing is so sophisticated, you need a specialist running that. I think I just had my marketing manager among 5 other things they did it. By the way, let's get the Google thing going because we know that's going to deliver leads to our website and so forth. But yeah, you're right. It's coming. Like in the last 20 years, it's amazing how much tech has evolved.
Right.
You've got to be a MarTech expert among other things, or at least have, people on your team who you trust that are really deep in all the technologies and the connectivity,
Yeah.
like all the APIs and, syncs that you have to do. Just like a website, so many things have to go right for it to operate at 99.9% your MarTech stack. If you have your lead routing system goes wacky, you're going to hear from it from sales. So, make sure that's working all the time too.
Well, I have another question for you. It's a bit of a hypothetical question. So I may or may not have a time machine here in New Hampshire. So you come visit, we get some lobster, get some beer, and we go use the time machine. It's in the backyard, covered in tarp. And it's a particular kind of time machine where you get to go chat with yourself. You get to meet yourself, have a conversation, and it's the you that just had 4 days ago got that poli-sci degree, that undergrad degree that you got. So you talk to yourself at that age. What are you telling yourself? What kind of advice, recommendations, what kind of things are you telling yourself?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned poli sci. I was 21 years old, and one of my most influential professors, Raghavan Iyer, never forget his name. He would come with no notes, speak in lucid paragraphs, and he said, "You guys don't know anything." Maybe he was 40s. He was an old guy. He says, "But what you should know is choose your path wisely. Choose an intentional path. What you don't want to do is get to 50. Doesn't matter, 40, 50, you pick a number and say, I wish I had gone here."
Mm,
And so I think as I would tell, myself back then, the same thing is like, try some stuff out, see what feels right. If your parents say do this, that doesn't mean you should do this. It's got to feel right to you. For example, my brother-in-law, his father and his grandfather were attorneys. So he said, like, I should be an attorney. 7 years into it is miserable. Now he's a very successful chief investment officer for funds.
yeah, jeez.
And he loves what he does, right? So you may not discover your first thing. And the other thing I would say is take more risk. I mean, I've got, kids in their early 20s now, so I like take more risk. You want to go do something, try it out. Yeah, same thing with, business. Like, hey, you may not strike gold. That's okay.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, especially if you're in a corporate setting, you feel like there's norms, there's values, there's culture. I think it's all changed with, you know, what I call the post-COVID era. We all have learned. Sometimes I stop to wonder, how did we do this so easily that we can run businesses and run teams of tens to hundreds to thousands, looking at a computer screen like I'm doing right now. Yes, we meet in person in the office we can, but take more risk, both personally and professionally, and because you can learn by where you fall short, right? If you're just always playing it safe and you're afraid of what's around the corner, you're still going to get sideswiped. I mean, you can't predict what's going to happen, and in fact, uh, I just think being present and puts you in that a better position to like, I'm open to what may happen that I can't control and I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'll deal with it, right? And I think managing change is one of the key, and dealing with ambiguity, strengths that people have interpersonally to succeed in life as well as business.
Right. Right. Man. Well, wise words. I can tell you've been in just a few places, just a few companies, just done just a few things. Man, extensive. So, where if people want to connect with you, either just to chat more or for some mentorship, any of that, where do you want them to go? What places, what sites, what URLs, all that?
Yeah, it's fairly easy. My Gmail is Grant E. Johnson 1. I'm the one, but somebody's 2, I'm sure. Grant E. Johnson 1 at Gmail. CMO Mentor, and I appreciate Casey mentioned CMOmentor.com. It has my contact information. And I just wrote another blog because I know a lot of CMOs and I feel for them are in transition. Like, read this first.
Mm,
Like, before you take your next CMO, like, hear all the questions they ask, the things that you want to make sure feel right. So yeah, that's the best way to connect with me via LinkedIn and the Grant E. Johnson one at Gmail.
and that blog post sounds fantastic. A little bit of preparation can help you avoid some pain later. So we will link to that blog post in the show notes. So people can just, if you're listening to this, just click right through. You can save it to your phone, add to your reading list. Grant, man, thank you so much for coming on here, schooling me on all sorts of everything from attribution to just putting the right foot forward and taking the right opening moves at a new position, new organization. I appreciate you coming on here.
Casey, it's my pleasure. I always love sharing some of what I've learned, and I hope it's helpful to others, and they can avoid some of my mistakes and get there faster, perhaps if they have the ambition and they put in the effort. I always say, you know, uh, don't complain about the results you didn't get for the work you didn't do, but when you put the work in, the results will generally follow.
Boom. That's a mic drop moment right there. Those listening to this, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, then share this with one person, 9 people, 3,000 people. It's not about the number. It's about what you got. What was your takeaway? Put that in LinkedIn. Tag Grant, tag myself. Let's create a little conversation. And thanks again, man. This has been great. Thank you, dude.
Nice talking to you. Take good care. Enjoy the rest of the week.